Hey, internet! That was even worse than I thought it would be as an intro, but you know what? I'm not gonna redo it. That's just how it is. I'm here! And this is a different setup. You can kind of see my eclectic decoration scheme of my desk and wall behind me, but you know, it is what it is. And also, I couldn't figure out how to get the microphone not in the shot, so it's just gonna sit there. But yeah, you're like, whoa, Al, what are you doing? And why are you not like playing a game right now? Good question. It is because I wanted to talk about my favorite trope today. So that's kind of weird. It's weird for me, but I don't know. Maybe it's not. I like talking about things, and I figured I'd make a video because, yeah. Today we're going to talk about a trope that's near and dear to my heart that I don't think has a name. Let me see. Alright, I quickly looked it up, and according to the internet, it's called parental substitute, but I'm talking about a very, very specific type. It is a type that I've seen in so many like games and movies and TV shows recently, but it always makes my heart melt. It just does. And I know it's like kind of trashy. It can be like any trope, right? Tropes are neither good nor bad. They just kind of exist. And you know, you can have something really great that has a lot of tropes in it, or you can have something like hastily thrown together in 10 minutes that also is just hella tropes. But what I'm talking about is this very specific case. Okay, so you have a character. Usually, in like most cases, from my examples that I will explain in detail, it's a rough and tumble man character. He's usually like a super good fighter. He's like cutthroat, hardcore, cool, badass guy. Like that's who he is. But then a sweet little baby comes into the picture, and against all odds, this guy is now gonna take care of this sweet baby and come to love it like it was his own child. And that's what I'm talking about today. Just like with this Heartless and this Pusheen figures, they're more like stuffed animals, that I have on my desk, this is like, I don't know, I just love it. I just love the super tough, badass guy, like, having a soft spot for, like, a child. And, you know, the child that I'm thinking of, like, when I'm thinking of specific examples, could be, like, you know, the character genuinely raising it from a baby to an adult, or it could be, like, you know, the found family situation where you run into an unlikely 12-year-old in the apocalypse, and you need to, like, take care of it. So that's what I'm talking about. So, like, what am I talking about? I'm gonna give you some examples of where I've seen this and how what I think about it in general, other than I just love it. And then I'm going to talk about Star Wars. Because, oh me, oh my, is Star Wars not hamming it up with this trope right now? And gosh darn it, I just can't not love it. So that's frustrating and not at the same time. So before I get to Star Wars, we gotta talk about non-Star Wars things. Okay, so to start this off, to like get down to the nitty-gritty, it feels like to me, through media, I feel like I'm seeing it everywhere all the time, more recently than I have in the past, like pretty much since Last of Us came out. I've seen it a lot. But it's not in any means like new. I wouldn't say this is like a new trope. I mean, for one thing, people do this in real life. Like, to take on a kid that you didn't necessarily have and raise it is like a normal thing. That's literally what adoption is. But it's also like a trope from Greek mythos, in the sense, like, not 100% exactly, because a lot of Greek myth demigod hero characters are more like hetero-paternal, where usually it's some like super fecundation process of the woman or like super fecundation. I'm just gonna define that really quick. So fecundation, and it sounds like I'm saying fuck. I'm not. It's fecund. I'll put it on the screen so you can read it. But yeah, fecundation is just getting pregnant. So super fecundation is when you get pregnant twice or multiple times at the same time, right? So you're pregnant with 2 babies at once, but from different parents, different fathers. So that's super fecundation, and it is possible. I actually didn't know this until I was reading an article about cats, and they were talking about how cats can be super fecundated. So you can have a litter of kittens that could be like, these are tabby cats and these are like Bengal cats, and they have different parents, different fathers from the same mom. So I know a lot of Greek mythos is like, here's your like god father, like Zeus or Poseidon, and here's like your regular Joe father who like his dumb wife got banged by Zeus by accident, so he kind of gets cuckolded. Because that's the Greeks, you know. But the ancient Greeks. I'm not trying to make a comment about modern day Greeks. I don't know anything. But to an extent, you could say like, alright, well the gods never raise these hero figures. It is usually like they are raised by like someone else in their life who isn't their parent, and then they kind of like grow up to be something important. And so that's like, I don't want to say that's the original tale, but it is, you know, it's something that's clearly been around forever. So it's not like the craziest thing ever. Where do I see this? Where is this coming from? Where I'm talking about, I see it everywhere. Well, I mean, there are games like Last of Us, which I love, but you know, actually, instead of just listing the games, I'm just gonna list pairs of characters. And if you recognize at least one pair of these characters, you might go, oh, I get what she's saying. We have Joel and Ellie from The Last of Us. We have Geralt and Ciri from the Witcher series. Barrett and his daughter from Final Fantasy VII. What's Barrett's daughter's name? And it's kind of, you might be like, whoa, hold on. That's actually Barrett's daughter. But I'm pretty sure it's not his biological daughter. I think it's like a girlfriend had a kid type of situation. So I'm counting it. There's Kratos and his son, maybe. I have not played the new God of War for reasons. Not bad reasons. But I haven't played that game, so I don't know. I guess it's his actual son. But it fits the vibe. That's a bad example. So, I mean, those are like a couple of like stronger examples. There are a couple that you could make a case for that I haven't. I mean, there's also like this one. But no, I'm not talking about Star Wars yet. Star Wars is not happening. We'll talk about Star Wars at the end. Non-Star Wars examples. But, you know, there are some that you could make a case for. I mean, another game that I'm super into is Kingdom Hearts. Which you should all know. I don't know why, but you should know. But Kingdom Hearts, and you could make a case that Donald and Goofy kind of act as like surrogate parents to Sora, and I actually have a very intense fan theory around that entire thing, but I'm not gonna get into that because I can make an entire video on my fan theory about how Sora is an anime boy raised by Disney characters in the life of a Disney character, but then has to ultimately realize his anime boy destiny. But okay, that's not why we're here. We're talking about dads. So what makes this appealing? What makes this trope appealing to me? Like, and I'm clearly other people, because like, you know, these stories that these things are coming from, like, are widely popular. They're super renowned. And I mean, there's probably a lot of examples of like bad games or movies that have the same trope. But, like, I mean, there's a lot of really good ones. So for me, it's not like a weird thing. I'm not like into dads. That's not like what I'm trying to, and I really want to express. I'm not into dads. That's not what I'm saying. I just really want to be clear. But, like, there's something super appealing to me about, like, seeing a very masculine male character kind of like go against a lot of these like old masculine stereotypes kind of, or tropes maybe, and being more caring and being paternal and being like oh, like, he's a super badass, you know, fighting guy, like, he's the Witcher running around killing monsters all the time. But he has a daughter, like, that he kind of, like, but a daughter that he, like, took in. He didn't have to do this. It's not like there's something special about the idea that this guy took in a kid, like, out of the kindness of his heart, asterisk, most of the time. Sometimes there is a level of, like, actually, most of the time, there's a level of, like, you have to do it because of some plot reason. That's why they're forced together in the beginning, but then he comes to love the baby, and you're like, oh, my heart. But, yeah, there's just something really great about seeing this, like, because it's not like this guy got a lady pregnant and then a baby happens, so he kind of, like, feels any sort of obligation to it. It's the fact that he has no obligation to it and still decides to raise it that makes it delicious, special. I love it. I just love paternal men. Is that, like, not in a weird way, not a sexual way. But no, like, it's like one of my favorite tropes, and I love it every time it shows up. And it was more scarce before, but now it's, like, everywhere. But I still love it. I just love seeing all these, like, dad characters walking around and being like, I hope my surrogate kid's okay. And it's fun because it adds, like, a fun set of stakes, and usually there's, I mean, it introduces a whole dynamic, right? Other than just, like, a master and apprentice, like, pure, like, power shift kind of thing or anything like that. It adds a level of, like, there's a lot of humor you can do around it. There's a lot of drama you can do around it. You know, there's always a scene in any story like this. There's always a scene where the child character is gonna go, but you're not my real dad. And then the like dad guy's gonna get all like, and he's gonna, like, you know, like, he wants to say, like, but I love you, but, like, he won't because it's, like, too early in the relationship. You know, that always happens. Or there's a moment, or if it doesn't happen with the kid saying it because maybe the kid's too young, it'll be like a third party person who comes in and is like, but that's not your real child. What if you have a real one? And then they go like, I can't have another child. I love this one. You know, like, there's a lot of drama around it. There's always a like rebellious kid moment, which it's kind of, it's not always fun. Sometimes it's fun, where, you know, it's like any teenage character is gonna have this with any other character pretty much. But it definitely happens here, where it's like, I mean, it's kind of like when Ellie in The Last of Us gets like, I can go, like, hunt shit on my own, and Joel gets all like, no you can't, and then, you know, they kind of have a spiff about it because it's like, I'm grown up, but I'm not, but you're not, you know, and it's so there are things about it that, like, you know, I know when it comes in it's gonna be like, and I think that's the tropiness of it, right? You know that if they're setting up this dynamic, then these things are going to happen, and if they don't, it's incredibly shocking or, like, very unique in that way. Are we at that point? Have I explained what the trope is enough that we can actually talk about Star Wars? Alright, so we reached the point where I'm finally gonna start opening the floodgates of thoughts and opinions I have around Star Wars. So let's just get into it now. This is my lightsaber. It's pretty. It's really pretty, alright? I like it. Look at this pommel. So good. So strong. It's red too, because, you know, it's Star Wars time. Can you see my Jar Jar Binks shirt? I love this shirt, but I, like, don't get to wear it enough. AKA the best Star Wars character of all time. Not even ironic. So Star Wars, like, I feel like if you watch any video that I make, not any, but a good portion of them, I'm probably gonna bring up Star Wars at some point. It's just, like, one of those fandoms that's very near and dear to my heart. I mean, I live next to a Death Star poster all the time, and I have little Star Wars guys everywhere. I love Star Wars. That's kind of what I'm trying to say. And you know, like, okay, Star Wars is, if you love Star Wars, if you're a Star Wars fan, you know, like, when you say that you love Star Wars, there are things that are like, but I really like specialize in this part of Star Wars. So don't hold me to it. I'm not an old EU person. I'm not gonna be like, I wasn't able to like buy Star Wars books as a kid, so pretty much almost anything before new canon I'm kind of dumb to in terms of extended universe, except for a couple of things. So yeah, I'm a Star Wars fan, but I'm not like, I grew up in the 70s and I watched the original one in theaters Star Wars fan. I'm sorry, I wasn't alive. So, but I'm gonna argue that I can still be a Star Wars fan. But it's a space western, right? That is the setting. Like, you know, it is a sci-fi, but mostly it's a space western, and it's such a weird story because it's a space western that's like heavily inspired by like samurai culture too. So if you were to take like samurai movies and like spaghetti westerns and like jam them together, that's where Star Wars was born from. Pretty much Jedi are just like samurai style. You can see it, I mean, in a lot of things, but if you didn't know, I don't know who I'm talking to, so like, I don't know if you guys, if this is offensive, I'm sorry. But yeah. And then the other part is very Western. I mean, you have Luke, who's like a small-time farmer boy who finally goes to the big city when he meets Han Solo and then gets on a starship for the first time in his life. Like, you know, it's really just like, you know, there's a lot of like, I'm the sheriff around these parts, blah blah blah. That's pretty much most of Star Wars, other than some other stuff. But you know, that was the basis of it. So going back to this trope, it's something that kind of appeared early on in Star Wars. You could argue, and I'm sure I will have a lot more opinions on this once the Obi-Wan show comes out on Disney Plus relatively soon. But it starts with, for me, little Grandpa Obi-Wan Kenobi on Tatooine finally meeting Luke for the first time, right after he gets the message. I'm talking New Hope. I'm talking OG Star Wars. Like, and pretty much once they meet, they're like, he's like, you know, immediately like, I'm gonna train you to be a Jedi. You're gonna be like, we're gonna do the Master Apprentice thing. And he kind of like takes him under his wing. And the fact that he like, Ben Kenobi knows so much about Luke's father and was able to kind of tell him about that, it's like kind of where this like paternal relationship comes in a little bit, because he's like, oh, you're so much like your dad. He's like, what was my dad like? You know, kind of like Harry Potter or something like that. Harry Potter would have been a really good example to use actually when I was listing a lot of things, because Harry Potter has like 50 dad characters. Pretty much anyone who's an adult man that Harry Potter meets is like a father figure to him, because his dad is dead. So that's like, you know, one of the original ones. But ever since then, there's just been, I mean, I find so many. And I wanted to just, like, I don't know, it feels like it's almost oversaturated. And that's hard for me to say, because I love this trope. But all the new stuff has been this. All the new stuff has been like this. There's, I mean, okay, there's The Mandalorian, and I'm also gonna talk more about Mandalorian, okay? Maybe I just wanted to talk about Mandalorian the whole time, and I made an entire video based around this so I could talk about Mando. But anyway, The Mandalorian, this is the plot where you have a big tough Mandalorian guy who's like part of the Death Watch Mandalorians, which, you know, if you're not familiar, is the like more hardcore and intense type of Mandalorian. Like, and he finds a sweet little baby and has to take care of it. And then when he has the chance to give it up, you know, like several times throughout the show, he's like, no, I have to protect the baby. Very sweet. I love it. But then they came out with Bad Batch, which is like the sister series to the Clone Wars, right? And like, Bad Batch is a more interesting case study of this trope, because instead of one guy has one kid, it's like 4 brothers are raising one child. But I'm into it. I love it. It's great. Especially because, like, well, I guess it's not 4. What the hell? Because Crosshair leaves in the first episode. Because of Order 66! Bad Batch is very good. Please watch it if you haven't. So you have the 3 guys, right? The 3 remaining non-Order 66 Bad Batch members. So, what the fuck are their names? Tech and Hunter and Wrecker? Is that his name? Rika? They all have that New Zealand accent because they're all clones. So I always try to copy it. I think his name's Wrecker, but they always say Rika? Is that his name? Oh my god. Echo is there. That's who I'm forgetting. His name is Wrecker. Also, I forgot about Echo. So there was 4. I was just not remembering. Right? Hold on. Tech, Wrecker, Hunter, Echo, and then Crosshair, but like not Crosshair. So like, the inciting incident of the Bad Batch, like, again, the first couple episodes is that they're hanging out, they're like the best of the best. They're like, they're freakish clones. They are not like normal looking clones, which is kind of funny to say because they don't look like the other ones. That's why they're the Bad Batch. And they like, but they're super badass because they all have enhanced skills, each individual one, so they all have a specialization. And it's very obvious by looking at their character designs which one's which one's the smart one, which guy's super strong. Like, you can just tell, but I dig it, it's all good. So they're on Camino, where all the clones live when they're not working, I guess. And there's a new tiny little clone girl, and her name's Omega. Her name's Omega, but they all have New Zealand accents, so it's Omega. Stuff happens, and then all of a sudden, they're on the road with Omega, and they're just trying to live. They're just trying to survive. They're trying not to get killed by the new Empire, because the Republic is falling, because the war is over, all that stuff. All that Star Wars stuff. It's like 4 dads and a baby situation. There's a lot of, sweet moments in that show. It's chock full of sweet moments, and I love it. Tech, the smart one, will have, a moment where he's like, oh, I actually have to teach you about something, and, let me show you how to do it. Or Wrecker will have to think for a second, because he has to think about the type of impression he's giving to Omega on how to, run headlong into danger. Hunter's, the main dad, though. I think everyone who watches that show would agree that Hunter's dad number 1, and Omega also kind of treats him like dad number 1. So it's more like if you had one dad and maybe a bunch of uncles, you could argue, but I think they fit the trope really well. They're so cute. This isn't from a new Star Wars thing necessarily. It's more from if you read the books or extended universe, the current canon extended universe stuff. Almost every Jedi Padawan story to me fits this trope. Almost all of them. If you watch the Clone Wars, I definitely think Anakin and Ahsoka have this. Anakin definitely when I talk about Ahsoka to people who aren't familiar with who Ahsoka is, I almost refer to her as Anakin's first child / Anakin's only child, because Anakin has Luke and Leia, right? They are born because he and Padme had kids. That's canon. But the thing is, he never raised them. Pretty much he didn't even know they were born, right? Because, at the end of episode 3, he gets all murder crazy, and he's all why are you with Obi-Wan? And she's all bro, what? And then he's choked to death, and then she's blah, and then dies. But before she dies, she has 2 babies, and then Obi-Wan and Bail Organa ferry them away in the night. And they're we have to separate them. So he doesn't know they're alive or raise them at all. So they're pretty much not even his kids. But Ahsoka is a young Padawan, and if you're not familiar with Padawan culture, let me explain that really quick before I just jump into it. I don't know what level of person I'm talking to here, so I'm so sorry. This is too much or too little information. It's probably the wrong amount, but I couldn't tell you which way. A Padawan is a proto-Jedi, right? Pre-Jedi. And You start as so the way the Jedi temple order runs is like, you know, there are people who go out and they find like babies, like straight up, they're looking for like as young as you can get them. And they take the younglings to the temple and they start their training. And if you're taken by the Jedi, you were like, that's it. You're a Jedi now. You're going to be raised like a Jedi. Like, and you're raised up, and then you get, I guess once you get out of youngling form, which is, I don't know, probably like, it's like straight up think like preschool to like elementary school level almost. Maybe it's more like elementary to middle school. That's probably better. You become a Padawan, and you get a Jedi to train under, and you become like essentially an apprentice, and you have a master who will teach you how to be a Jedi and be cool. And, like, there's a whole process as to, like, how do you get a master and who becomes a master and blah, 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 blah. But I'm not talking about that. But the thing is that it's literally a system designed to have these cool, badass fighters, pretty much samurai monks, be assigned to adorable children who they then have to raise and teach for the next many years of their life, for a long, long, long time, until they themselves become Jedi masters and get their own Padawans. So, you know, it's like built into the lore right there that like that's what it is. I don't know. It's very cute and I love it. But yeah, Ahsoka and Anakin have that, and it's really, really developed throughout the entire Clone Wars show because like it's about them. If you haven't watched the Clone Wars animated show by Dave Filoni, definitely do. It's so good. Like, it was on Cartoon Network for children, but like, that show was designed for me. I say as an adult woman. But like, the show is about them, and it really goes into the, like, relationship between the Padawan and Jedi, and also, like, it goes a lot into the relationship between, like, Anakin and Obi-Wan, which is another couple I'd like to bring up. Because there is a tricky line here as to where is it, like, a father figure and where is it, like, a big brother? And I think Obi-Wan really is on both sides of this line many times because he's, like, if you look, like, okay, if we're talking about the movies, episode 1, right? There's baby Anakin, and he's like a straight up baby in that movie, and he's adorable, and I love him. Phantom Menace is a gem. And I'm not even being facetious. I genuinely love Phantom Menace. I grew up with that movie. Jar Jar Binks for life. I love Darth Maul. That's where they're from. But so he's a baby. So Anakin's like a baby, and Obi-Wan's like, he's still a Padawan. And so he's kind of like late teens-ish. It's really hard to tell how old they were supposed to be versus how old the actors were versus how old the intention was, you know, because it's all over the place in terms of like actually casting people. But you can kind of see how he's like an older brother type of figure in that regard. But it's like once Qui-Gon dies, and then because Qui-Gon agrees to take Anakin on as his Padawan, but then he dies. So then it's now Obi-Wan's responsibility to take this boy on as his Padawan. So it's like a double trope. Because Qui-Gon was gonna be the dad, and then Obi-Wan becomes the dad. And so I think it's almost like you can argue that Obi-Wan is then like a parentified brother type of, if I'm like expanding this trope into even farther, he's almost like a parentified brother because like even in the Clone Wars show, which again focuses a lot on Obi-Wan and Anakin's relationship, there's a lot of like times where Obi-Wan is trying to train him like a master would and try to like a more parental type of figure and go like, you can't do this is crazy, you need to remember the rules, you need to do all this stuff. And then there are times where he kind of wants to be crazy wild card and play with him almost like a brother would. And I think it's like just so well written and well done to the point where it's like, oh, you kind of see him shifting roles a lot. It's not super set, which I loved it. But it does fit that trope. I also, so far my Star Wars daddy baby pairings are, who have I talked about so far? I've talked about the Bad Batch, the Mandalorian, which, will touch and come back. Anakin and Ahsoka, Obi-Wan and Anakin. I mean, there's an entire book called Master and Apprentice about Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon Jinn. It's the exact same thing. I can talk way in depth about some of these books. I guess one of the few Padawan master relationships that I don't think fits this mold is Yoda and Dooku. When Dooku is a Padawan, he's like, I don't think he gets that close to Yoda. To be fair, Yoda is like the rule book of the Jedi temple, so I don't see Yoda like forming these attachments because they're not supposed to form attachments, right? So the whole, because that's like, one of the biggest things about being a Jedi is no attachments, no bonds to other people or things or places. You have to be like a free spirit kind of. It's actually in the Master and Apprentice book, not written by, I was gonna say it's written by a fictional character. No, I guess I should just talk about Master and Apprentice a little bit because, again, this is a book that really focuses on this trope and really focuses on this type of relationship. So, broad strokes, without going into too much detail in case you're worried about spoilers, Master and Apprentice is about a young Obi-Wan Kenobi and a young Qui-Gon Jinn. And they've been Padawan and Master for not too long. Well, no, actually they've been Padawan and Master for a while, but there is a point where Qui-Gon goes, we're just not clicking and I don't know if it's gonna work. So a big driving point of like the whole story is that Qui-Gon's like considering kind of passing Obi-Wan off to another Jedi for him to continue his like training and not have to deal with it anymore because he doesn't think they click very well. Obi-Wan, being a young man where this is like the only person he's like really been trained under for his entire life, like consistently, is trying really hard to prove himself to Qui-Gon and like really stay like, so he's trying the whole time to really be like, oh, Master, I'm doing all this stuff, like, isn't that good? And Qui-Gon's just like, I don't know about this. And so it's kind of hard because Qui-Gon's like, oh, I'm failing you, and Obi-Wan feels like he's failing Qui-Gon the whole time. So if you are not familiar, Qui-Gon Jinn was a Padawan to none other than Dooku. What's his first name? I don't remember Count Dooku's first name. But Count Dooku was a Jedi. He became a Sith, like, because he was a Jedi. He decided to leave the Jedi Temple, and then after that, because that's where he got, like, his Force abilities and lightsaber training was straight up, he was just a Jedi for a while, and then he decided to go be a Sith afterwards because of his, like, lineage on Sereno? Is that what his planet's called? I think it's Sereno. I'm not gonna look it up. But, Qui-Gon's master was Count Dooku. But Count Dooku had a Padawan before Qui-Gon named Rael something. His name was Rael Averross. It's some of the last names. And Rael, so there are moments in the book, and the reason I love Master and Apprentice is that it so the main story that's like in the present day of the time the story is being told is following Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan doing some Jedi stuff, investigating things and doing cool stuff. But it flashes back a lot to Qui-Gon being a Padawan and like his relationship to his master, Dooku, but also having Rael come into the picture every once in a while as like this big brother type. And it's, it just fits this trope really well, again, because it's like Rael and Dooku and Qui-Gon are not related at all. In any context, they are not related. They're all from different planets. Like, But because Dooku essentially raised two different boys, he raised Rael and he raised Qui-Gon, like, they kind of grew up seeing each other as brothers. And there is a great, like, moment in, there's a great moment in the book where, Qui-Gon's nervous because he doesn't want to tell Dooku something, like, and this is him as a Padawan. He doesn't want to tell his master something, so he goes to Rael to, like, kind of, like, talk to someone else and kind of get some stuff figured out. Because Qui-Gon is, like, one of those, he's a boy who needs a lot of, like, self-discovery and needs to kind of, like, think about things a lot, so he has to talk to a lot of people. It has a lot of fun scenes. So he's talking to Rael, and he's talking about connections and bonds and things, attachments that, Jedi aren't supposed to have. And Rael brings up that, like, the Jedi are hypocrites inherently because the entire Padawan, like, master system creates bonds. It does create these attachments that they're not supposed to have. And by, like, it is kind of ignoring the fact that, if you give someone a kid and have them raise it for 10 years, like, and then tell them to not have any attachment to it, it doesn't really work. And so I just love that, like, the book recognized that and it just, like, called it out, and that whole book was about that entire relationship. And so, yeah, this is something that's super, super prevalent in the Star Wars universe. So to switch it up, I want to talk about Star Wars some more, except let's talk about some of these parentified dad characters that are not Jedi and are not essentially forced into this culture of raising kids that aren't yours. Because it's not limited to this, as you can tell. My shirt gives any hints. Also, this is an Assassin's Creed Boba Fett crossover shirt that I bought. It's very cool. It's so weird. And I forget that I have it, but I dig it. I'm into it. Assassin's Creed is another really good example because there's a lot of this trope in there too. But I'm not going to talk about Assassin's Creed. I have been listing a lot of characters that are, like, so when I initially introduced this trope in the beginning of the video, I was talking about specifically male characters raising kids up. This, of course, is not always the case. There are women characters who can kind of, like, become mommified. It's just not as common, because I think for my specific description, there's not a lot of, like, women characters in all of media, this isn't a Star Wars specific thing, that are, like, fit that badass fighter type. It's sad to say, but there's just not a lot. Or they're, like, super lame. Or they're, like, so cutthroat that they have, like, they'll just, like, kill a baby if they see it, so they would never, like, get close to one. You know what I'm thinking, like. But I do want to call out a special one because I think it's really good and it's super relevant because it's about Boba Fett. So you guys remember when Boba Fett watches his father get beheaded by Samuel L. Jackson? Mace Windu cuts Jango Fett's head off, and Boba's like, my dad. That in and of itself is a little interesting because, as you know, maybe, Jango Fett was like a bounty hunter guy, doing his thing, and he was also the base that they used for the entire clone army. So all the clones are clones of Jango Fett. And Jango Fett, while he was hanging out on Kamino where they make all the clones, he was like, hey, give me, because the clones that they used for war have this, like, advanced aging process, so they don't have to, like, raise a man for 20 years for him to be, like, a 20-year-old body. They age really fast. So he decided, so Jango, I don't know, the specifics of this I've never looked into too much, and I could look it up. It's definitely there, but Jango decided at some point that, or he was given, I don't know, I don't really know. I should look into it. He has a clone that doesn't have the rapid aging whatever inside of him, and he decides to raise a clone of himself as his own child, and that's Boba Fett. Boba Fett is literally just a clone of his father being raised as his own kid. So does that fit the trope? That's up to you. I don't know. It could. it's a little weird because it's like a different thing entirely. But anyway, Jango Fett dies. Boba Fett is now alone. But, you know, we know later from the original trilogy that Boba Fett's clearly like a successful bounty hunter later. So how did that happen? There's another bounty hunter lady named Oracene, and I think it's because she knew Jango Fett and like heard that he died and kind of like stepped in, but she steps in and takes young Boba Fett under her wing, and they like start doing bounty hunting together and like maybe assassin stuff. I forget if she's like does assassinations too, but like, you know, again, Clone Wars TV show. That's where a lot of this is kind of like explored. This also comes up in a lot of books. It came up in the Asajj Ventress book, and I can't think of the name of it right now, but I'll throw it up if I remember to do this when I'm editing. Essentially, Oracene is like who we have to congratulate or blame for Boba Fett and his entire way of life. And that's kind of like a cool lady version of the trope. Because she's like totally badass and cool, and she's like an antenna coming out of her head and like a great ponytail, and you know, then she's raising a little boy. And then, you know, they're pulling heists together and shit by the time he's like 12 or whatever. So yeah, Boba Fett gets started really young. And that's kind of the other part of this story that not the story, but the other part of the trope that I just like adore is that, you know, parent character gets baby character and then kind of either intentionally or unintentionally like raises it to be exactly like they are. Like, it's kind of like the Geralt and Ciri thing. Like, Ciri's not a Witcher. She doesn't go through like the whole Witcher process, but Ciri's like pretty much a Witcher because like Geralt kind of raises her into the Witcher culture. Amongst other things, there's a lot of other aspects to the Ciri story, but like the Jedi one's very easy because that's like why they're paired up together. But you know, you have this like Oracene and Boba Fett, where Boba Fett, you know, I mean, theoretically he could have gone on to do anything, but he did go into bounty hunting like his father and also Oracene, so it's cool. It's cool. I'm kind of hoping that there are more like female versions of this in later Star Wars characters. There are some new like female characters that I think are very cool, and I want them to have more screen time, so I'm kind of hoping like Fennec Shand gets some kid at some point, or Fennec Shand just gets to hang out. I mean, she's like pretty much a main character in the Boba Fett show, and I'm down with that. I love her. She's so great. She's so cool. But yeah, she's a cool assassin. Can you imagine there's gonna be a book or something at some point where she has some kid, some punk kid that she has to then raise? I would read that book. So, I may have gotten to that point. We may have finally gotten to the Mandalorian point. So, The Mandalorian. A show that came out and no one really knew what it was going to be about at all, other than a Mandalorian. And then all of a sudden, in the first episode, super secret identity Din Djarin, Mandalorian, finds a baby Yoda that he's supposed to bring to the remnants of the Empire as a bounty. But when he finally returns the baby, he decides he's going to keep it instead. And that is how the show starts. It was amazing. It was crazy. Everyone was like, dude, what the fuck is this baby Yoda? Like, blah. And we're still like, where is this baby from? Like, what's the deal? And if you're wondering why I'm talking about Mandalorian like you've never heard of it, it's because it's really good and I don't want to spoil it for you if you haven't seen it. But if you have seen it, then I'm gonna bet that you've probably started watching the Boba Fett show. And the episode that I saw today, on a Wednesday, the day it comes out, it just like made me cry a little bit. So, I'm not gonna spoil it. because this show, because again, I'm talking about an episode that came out today that I just saw. And these types of shows are so bingeable. And so, like, you know, I have a hard time watching them hour by hour, week by week. So I can imagine that there's someone who's like waiting for it all to come out so they could watch it all at once. And, you know, I'm gonna put this video out like tomorrow or the day after. So I'm not gonna like wait. So I'm not gonna spoil Boba Fett. I'm really not gonna talk about this Boba Fett show too much. Other than what I've already said, that Fennec Shand is a character, but you can tell from those cover art, so that's not too much of a spoiler. Also, Fennec Shand was hanging out with Boba Fett in the later seasons of Mandalorian, so this is not, like, new information. But we're here to talk about dads and what it means to be a father. And maybe I actually just wanted to talk about Mandalorian the whole time, and maybe I've said that like 4 times. I don't really remember anymore. Because I just want to talk about Mandalorian. So, Mandalorian's great, and I love it. It is. It's great, and I love it. I think most people do. I mean, Star Wars fans are incredibly, like, bitchy with each other. But I think this is, you know, it's been standing out really well. I mean, it's standing out in mainstream culture, which, you know, extended universe Star Wars stuff doesn't really stand out mainstream too much. Some, you know, part of that probably Disney marketing, but it's holding up. It's doing really well. When the first episode came out, and I was sitting there watching it, like, oh, I'm so excited to see what this show's about. I thought it was going to be about Mandalore, or like, there's a lot. So Mandalorians are not strictly from Mandalore. Mandalorian is kind of a culture that descends from Mandalore, the planet, and there's a lot. There was, during the Clone Wars, if I'm to talk like a historian, during the Clone Wars, Mandalore had like a really crazy time. They had like a really hardcore power shift in the middle of it, which then got power shifted again by the Empire, so it's crazy. And so I kind of thought, you know, Mandalore was like, so much crazy shit was happening. I figured The Mandalorian would be about that, and that's not what it was about at all. It was about a little Baby Yoda, and Baby Yoda came in, and the second I saw that gorgeous baby child, the second I saw him, I was like, oh no, this is just about this big, tough, I never show my face Mandalorian getting attached to a little boy. And I love it. Even though it's funny, I'm calling Grogu a little boy. Grogu, of course, being the name of Baby Yoda. I'm calling him a little boy because I think, like, he acts and looks like a baby. He's 50 years old, I think, from what they've said. Again, I'm not gonna look it up right now. You could just go with my guesses. He's like 50 years old, so he's clearly older than Din Djarin, but, like, Din Djarin is like a functioning adult man, and Baby Yoda, like, can barely walk, so. The second the baby came in, I knew that this whole show was just gonna be about that, and, like, I love it because, again, this is my favorite trope. This is, like, a trope that's, like, that bucket of ice cream, and I just keep eating it. I just keep scooping it down, and I'm just like, ooh! I can't not. It's, like, hard for me to stop, but, like, The Mandalorian's doing such a great job of it. This video is about the trope. It's about the man becoming the parent and taking care of the baby, the trope. The video. And I think this one's extra special because, well, okay, it's special to me because it's Star Wars, but because this is like a perma baby, for lack of a better term. Like, because we already know that Grogu's like 50 years old, like, there's like a very low chance that there's gonna be a time skip long enough for Grogu to just like grow up all of a sudden. Like, you know, we can assume he's gonna get more skills and stuff, and there is evidence that he does get, like, I don't want to say he gets like more skills right off the bat, but, you know, there's evidence that, you know, between him and Din Djarin, they have more of a system that they can develop and things like that. But, you know, we're probably never gonna see like adult Yoda version Grogu. You know, like that would probably, because everyone would be dead, right? Because that would be like hundreds of years probably. Again, I don't really get how Yoda types age. I don't think most people do, because there's only been Yoda and Yaddle who are that type of alien, and now there's the baby. So we know that they're babies at some point, and then they're old Jedi Masters at another point, and everything in between's like, that's like an interesting point, because in a lot of these stories there is some level of time skip or understanding that the kid's gonna be an adult and gonna take the place of the parent. But we're probably not gonna see that. I mean, right? It's crazy, because it's almost like an indefinite thing. Are we gonna see Din Djarin die before, like, Baby Yoda can even speak? Like, it's very possible. It's like sad. I really hope that's not what happens, but I also wouldn't be surprised. So he's kind of just got like a perma baby that he has to take care of, and I kind of love it. I feel like when you have a baby character that's like an actual like swaddle baby, the stakes are so different. They're so much higher. Like, okay, if you are Anakin Skywalker and you have a Padawan, Ahsoka Tano from like season 1, where she's like, I don't know, 15-ish, 12 to 15, kind of. Assuming I'm going based off of human years, I don't know how all these alien species age in terms of actual years, so whatever. You have a young teenage girl who you're taking care of. The stakes that you're gonna have if you're in a predicament situation is most likely that she's not gonna listen to you. She's gonna do her own thing, and that's gonna get her in trouble. Or, like, she's gonna try to bite off more than she can chew, and you have to come in and save her. Those are, like, guaranteed that's what's gonna be. Like, with a baby, I mean, think of any movie. And this is a trope I hate, personally. But, like, think of any movie where it starts off with one of the characters is a pregnant woman. And you know the second that you see that pregnant woman, that she's going to go into labor at the most inopportune time. And like, you know, I sound like, you might be like, that's not like a trope. I mean, it definitely is. I don't know what movies you're watching, and maybe it's like a horror movie thing, because it does happen a lot in like horror suspense movies where they'll be like, oh, here are all the characters, and then here's someone's pregnant girlfriend, and then all of a sudden they have to be really quiet because a murderer's in the house, and all of a sudden her water breaks. Oh no! She's gotta like fucking have birth and be really silent while it's happening, just so like the stress happens. Similar to that, whenever there's a baby, you know, there's gotta be a point where they're all gotta be quiet, and they're like, oh my god, we gotta be so quiet. And then the baby starts to get a little fussy, and then they're like, oh, shh, shh, shh. Like, and the whole thing is like, is the baby gonna cry out because the baby doesn't know that there's danger? It's kind of like the thing. So with Baby Yoda, because he's not quite the cry baby like a regular human baby would be, he's a little different. So, you know, the risks are still kind of there. Like, he's carried around in this super cute baby carriage pretty much, and like, he's just hungry all the time, so he always wants to eat snacks, so he can just like wander off and eat something poisonous. And like, well, you better watch out, Din. Baby's gonna eat something bad. Make sure your ship is baby-proofed. It's an interesting take on the trope, because it's never gonna, like, the status quo changing is really low. Like, low stakes. And just because it's such a great, like, I don't want to say twist, but like plot point of what happens to Grogu at the end of the last Mandalorian season, which was season 2? Season 3? Season 2? I think it's season 2. Basically, what happens, without giving away the good parts, is Grogu has to go somewhere else by himself. And Din Djarin can't go with him, for the moment. And so that's, like, that's the way they can, that's the only way they can like change the status quo of this relationship, is they have to have it be like, don't go where I can't follow Mr. Frodo. Like, that's the only thing they can do, because like, how would they separate it? Baby Yoda's always gonna be a baby and he's always gonna need him. Din Djarin's always gonna be in love with this stupid baby because it's such a sweetheart. Look at his devilish black eyes. Aren't you in love with them? Because I am. It's such a cool story and it's so sweet, but it's so paternal. And I wonder if that's gonna put people off of the show at a certain point, if like Mando being too paternal just becomes the focus of every episode, and it's just like, oh hey, what's this new episode of Mandalorian like? Well, Din Djarin takes care of a baby again. And that's it. And you're like, just like the last 12 episodes. I feel like it can get really stale really fast. So I'm excited that they seem to be trying to make strides to like keep it interesting. Because I love this trope and I love this show and I love these characters, but I'm like, I can see very easily how this can be like, yeah, we're done. We don't want to hear about the Mandalorian anymore. Although I have to say, the last 2 episodes of Boba Fett, again, not really spoilery, have been very Mandalorian heavy, like Mandalorian lore and characters coming into the show heavy, and that's all good. I mean, it's kind of weird that the last 2 episodes have pretty much been Mandalorian episodes that they just threw into Boba Fett, but like, can we bring Boba Fett back into his show, please? Like, and I know, there's a lot of controversy over the Boba Fett show right now, because everybody's all like, oh my god, they're like fucking cyberpunks in the show, and I don't like cyberpunks in Star Wars, not my Star Wars, blah, blah. I'm not gonna judge the show until the entire season's out. Y'all should calm down. Star Wars fans are too crazy. I love you guys, but y'all's is nuts. That, in a nutshell, is my favorite trope. That is my favorite type of trope, is just guys becoming dads and having to raise kids. And it's super prevalent in Star Wars, but it's super prevalent in everything else. I probably won't make another video about this trope unless something crazy happens and some new delicious piece of media has the big trope and I feel like I can talk about it for more than 5 minutes. But yeah, I just, like I very cleverly hid in the video, I just wanted to talk about Mandalorian the whole time. My voice is cracking a little bit, it's kind of dry. But no, I just wanted to talk about Mandalorian mostly. I was just really spurred on by the Boba Fett episode I saw today. Again, I'm not gonna spoil it, but yeah, I feel like I have a lot of like crazy person opinions on things in media and games and stuff, as you can probably tell if you're a person who watches anything on my channel. Sorry, but not sorry, because you keep watching it if you do, or you don't. But I have a lot of opinions on a lot of things, and I'm just like want to vent them out to the world in video form, because that's what people do nowadays. I don't want to put it on Facebook, so I'm just gonna put it on YouTube. That's kind of the trade-off. I sound less crazy when it's not in text. You could at least hear my context and you can hear me being sarcastic. I don't want to get in fights with like my cousins and stuff. I guess all I'm trying to say is these might become more common. There might be like, if I don't put out a stream video on Friday, I might put out a think piece. Is that what would I call this? I don't know. But I might put out some talking piece of me describing some sort of thing that I like or I'm interested in, or fan theory that I have. They probably won't all be Star Wars, but I mean, I'm in a Star Wars mood. Like, I didn't even mention the best Star Wars character of all, Thrawn. Shout out to my boy Thrawn, aka my favorite Star Wars character. No, but Thrawn is my favorite character. I can talk about Thrawn for so long. like probably way too long. I love him. He's so gorgeous. I mean, no, I'm gonna stick by that. He's gorgeous. He's blue. That's my favorite color. He's like super fucking smart. He's like, there's a lot I can say about Thrawn. I might make an entire video about Thrawn and release it next week. Just because I'm afraid that there are people who don't know who he is. If you don't know who Thrawn is, like, your life is missing. You're missing out. Like, there's so much. His best friend, Eli Vanto, I love him too. Oh my god. Okay, but before I get into other topics that I can talk about, whatever. I don't know. There's like stuff I'm supposed to say about YouTube, but I forgot what they are. I came up with a good one, a call to action, if you will. Name a pair that fits this trope from something that you like. That would be cool. Like, especially if I didn't mention them, and bonus points if it's Star Wars. I guess I'm gonna like try to list a couple more before the video's out. We may as well get the whole run around. Alright, from Final Fantasy XIV, you have Reen and Thancred, Harry Potter and Professor Lupin, Harry Potter and Sirius Black. You have Harry Potter and Ron's dad. Detroit Become Human. You have Hank and Connor. That's one of my favorites. How could I not remember that? From Lord of the Rings, you have Elrond, Lord of Rivendell, and Aragorn, son of Arathorn. You have Bilbo Baggins and Frodo Baggins, yo. That's not his son. That's his nephew.